Okay, we're all set. I don't remember where we started last time. I think that study group 4 went last time, so they should probably go first, don't you think? I'm pretty sure they did. They might not have, but we'll say they did. So that would be, we can talk, us and Landers, Peter, David, and Kristen. And I'm in David's spot, so I think he's absent.
Speaking of which, he wasn't even in calculus class today, so I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
I'll send him a message and see if I
I
can.
hope he doesn't have some of these little sicknesses.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was trying to.
There's something wrong with this computer. It says an app caused a problem. So the default was reset to Internet Explorer. Yeah, it's like broke. Can't hardly use it. Oh, and now it's thinking on my OneDrive files. That could take a few hours. Okay. Oh, look at this beautiful thing. I wasn't even paying attention. Sorry, I'm trying to get into the session. Do you know when you started? Was it any better?
I still can't technically get that, but I was able to get in on Firefox on
really?
Canvas.
Okay. So not much?
Right.
I'm just seeing one, you know. After it broke, so maybe whatever broke on this one needs to break. What? Study group 4, I lied. I'm so sorry. We need study group 1 to go first. We've got someone that needs to leave and I'm forgetting. So, thank you so much. Understanding. So study group 1, redo is Jonathan, Keegan, Jay, Ethan, and Alex. You guys do so good at deciding what you're going to do without even speaking to each other. That's all right.
Did you need to go first? I think you do.
Go for it.
I'll do it if I want to. Do I need to do the request control or whatever?
Yeah, do the remote control.
Hey, how do I do that again?
Somewhere
You do it.
in your,
Oh, okay. I'll do that.
do you have to say it when you join, at the one that's joining, because someone,
There we go. All right. So this is my form. You can highlight what you want to pick and check it out. It'll tell you the book is due in 2 weeks from whatever the date added was. And if you try to check out more books and are in the system, it'll give you an error. So like this one has 1. So if I do it again, it says that the book is currently out of stock. Yes, this is my XML file. Probably looks the same as everyone's. This is my book class. I have my properties and fields, my default constructor and full constructor. Then I have my method for is copy available. It just looks at the number of copies in the system, compares it to the number of copies that are currently checked out. If the copies in is greater, then it returns true. For the checkout book, it looks at the Boolean that was returned from this method, the date added, and the number of copies out. Then if it was true, it gives you this message. If it was false, it gives you this one, and then returns that message, and then just a toString. On the form 1, I have an index, and then my books out variable just equals 0, so that every time you start up the form, it resets, just to make it easier to test. I did the while loop with the switch statement and everything to write to the list box. That was kind of like the base of the XML example. Then on my checkout button, I use this to check, see if an item is currently selected in the list box. If it is, then the index is set equal to the selected index. I save that information to a new book. Then I set a Boolean of in stock equal to the copies in and the copies out, and call that is copy available method. If it is available, then num copies out gets added as 1, and that'll happen every time you check it out. And then we call the checkout book message that'll tell you that it's checked out. The check-in, same thing. It looks at the index. It saves that information to a book object. And then it decreases 1 from that num checked out number so that it can keep track. And then just says, thank you for returning the book. That's basically it. Any questions? Alrighty.
Anything you want me to ask? One thing that I'm gonna give Keegan a hard time about, is I noticed that it said due in 7 days from this date. Well, the date classes are really complicated and hard to work with C#, but you have a lot of capabilities. So you guys are gonna have to kind of explore those for your parking garage. So you make sure you look at that date span, class, different things like that, and do a little bit of experimenting with that. So,
Time's gonna be fun too.
yes, so thank you. But we won't be able to do that on this one. Good job. Who's going next?
To start off, here's my books. Nothing too complicated. I did add a check-in book as well. My is copy available, just make sure that the number of copies available is greater than 0. It is returns true. If it isn't, it returns false. My checkout book method ensures that there's copies available, and as long as there is, it takes away from what's available and adds 1 to what's checked out currently. And it returns today's date plus 14 days.
Oh, that looks like a good thing to know. Add date.
And if there are no copies available, I just make it return the minimum value, which is like 0th hour on the 1st January year one. My check-in book, though, make sure that there's still copies out before it checks in, and then adds copies in and takes one away from what's out and returns true. Otherwise, if there's no copies out, it returns false because there's no copies to return. But reading in the file, I'm sure everyone's is similar. And then I have it print out the information of the book whenever they select one. When they check that one out, I make sure that they've still selected one, and then I make sure that there was one available by getting that minimum value, making sure it's not that minimum value. And then I print out the information as well as the due date. Otherwise, I give a message saying there's no copies available. And for my check-in, I again make sure that I run my check-in method, and as long as that returns true, I print out the new information and thank them for returning the book. And start that.
You're not have room for more copies.
Yeah, if
Wherever you got this copy, it isn't ours.
yeah, if you're trying to return more copies than we originally had, we're not accepting more
Shelf
copies.
space for it.
There's no more shelf space.
Yeah,
So-
interesting, because I might have returned a book that doesn't belong to you, and then you return the right book, it's gonna say, I'm not taking that book.
Congrats, you just got a
So
free
you're
book
gonna
because
be
someone
able
else
to
gave
do it.
us one. And then so we check out. When it checks out, it gives us the due date. And then if we check out too many, it'll tell us there's no more copies available. And then we can check in again, and it'll thank them for returning the book. And if they return too many, it tells them we don't have room for the book. Any questions?
Do you have an array keeping track of what's checked out this run? Is that what? how you're
No.
keeping track of? Is that
Um,
part of your XML file, I guess?
That's, yeah, the XML file has how many books we have available at the beginning, and then we have the variable of num copies checked out to determine how many are currently out, and that can't go below 0. Any other questions? Okay.
Very good.
I'll just close here.
Here's the one next.
Well, I guess I'll go.
Good.
Make it bigger.
All right. So I just went off of the example code for mine. And on the load, I have it just load each book object into a new book and then add it to the list box. And then when you change the index, it actually makes sure something is selected, and then it sees what's selected, and it will update all my labels and such. I suppose I'll show you what it looks like. It's a little small here, but if you select like Ready Player One, it only has the title here, but if you want more information on it, you can select what book, and it will give you all the provided information. And you can check out, and if you try to check out more than it has, you can't do that. I decided to make it where you can check in as many as you want, though, to account for the human errors that are inevitable. But anyway, this makes sure that that something is actually selected, and it puts all the labels as that. Here's the change copies method that I implemented. It's supposed to be in the books.cs, but I didn't do that. I put it in the form1.cs. And the way it works is it determines which button is clicked, whether it's check in or check out. it will call this method sending either a 1 or a -1, and it will apply that to the instance of the book, whatever you have selected. And it won't let you check in or check out without having an instance of the book selected. So that kind of catches itself there. The books.cs looks probably like everyone else's, where the is copies available. This is if there are no copies available, it will return true, or if you're trying to check one back in, it will return true to actually allow you to do that. Oh yeah, you can check it in. If there are no copies available, it will say, oh, you can't do that. It'll be negative. But real simple, pretty self-explanatory with all the comments that I put in. I'm surprised I put in comments. I did it mostly for Renee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You did it mostly for the point, that's not why.
Well, you're the one giving the points. There any questions on how it works? All right.
Any questions? Looks great. Yay. Susanna, you got anything you want to show us? Want us to help you figure it out?
I got it down. It's just I didn't have time because it was done and just didn't realize that it was due today. So I just played Destiny over the weekend.
Okay. So you'll turn it in by tonight for me though?
Yeah, I can definitely get it done tonight.
Same day,
I'm in the same boat.
same boat, that's what I was thinking.
I think that's
No internet, no program.
And no back.
No back, no program, nothing, just nothing working out for you. Well, let's go on to study group 3 then. We got Sim Blair, Andrew, Mahala, and Nat. All right, I'm going to show my first. No, Nat.
breaking our program right before she showed us.
Is he making it right? Yeah. That's always a
Just
good
add a
idea.
colon here.
Actually, I should have just mixed what I had up there so you guys can see what I was trying to do. So I didn't.
Don't forget Control Z, Control Z.
I tried doing that, and
I did Control Z enough times.
I did something, and it overwrote my XML file, so the XML file is totally empty.
Oh, nice.
It has the header and the ending tag of the book, and that's it.
Any of these guys will send you one.
No, I should have saved a copy of that Excel file. I knew when I was going to do a break.
These guys will send you one if you want to. I bet you got a whole bunch of people in here email you one that's very similar to yours. Might not be exactly the same. but
You
it'll
just
be
pull
very
up from something
Yeah.
I just typed in random numbers from last week. I'm hoping no one checks it, check their
We
value.
got lots of other stuff to
You know,
check.
I've messed that up enough times, but I don't do anything anymore with Visual Studio without having source control.
Yeah, making sure you have a copy somewhere.
I have at 10 minutes midnight, lost what I have on my thumb drive and went out to source control, downloaded it, and was able to save it and turn it on.
Thankfully, I do have it bound to source control. It's just, for some reason, I can't get TFS to work on this computer.
Well, it seems to be giving Andrew a problem too. So whatever network issues we're having, so it's probably out there okay. For all the good that does you. Can you go to the website URL portal, the https CIS151.otc.edu, and see if you can download a zip file from your project.
Or just download that file that you need.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just the one that you did. That's right. Okay.
You got a
I'm gonna
message.
shut up.
Oh, are you ready? Okay.
We're ready. She's just being all backfired.
Okay. So I actually put my main menu into a method because I kept repeating the menu. Let me go ahead and post that. And mine, I'll first run mine, because mine doesn't look anything like the example. I did it like this again. I have a
Quit
check-
doing these console apps.
I like
Next one you don't get credit for, seriously. You can do a Forms app, but you can't do a console app. You wouldn't go keep a job with a console app, sorry.
Not with that attitude.
Okay, let's see this beautiness. Look at all this work you did to make it a console app.
But it's so pretty.
You're beating yourself
It's
to
so-
death.
So
Beating
nice.
yourself to death.
So I typed one,
Very
checked
nice.
out, two checks in, then which book will you be checking out or in, whichever I clicked on. Then I can type in which number and I'll say thank you for checking out Ready Player One, which is just the title. And it changes each book I go to. What I was not able to accomplish was getting my XML file updated. So like making copies equal 0 or copies equal 2 or, changing it. And I was going to put that, scroll down to the bottom, with each time it says, thank you for doing so, I wanted it to say +1, +2, whichever part I was putting it in. So that's all I really did. Not in a Windows form though, I'm sorry.
It's all right, scroll, let's see what you did there.
It's helpful when you be able to use console apps for like small utility programs. But
Yeah.
for anything bigger than that, that's not going to be running like that's going to do more than just this one small little thing. Then you want to do a Forms app usually.
I'll just change the culinary feature, how about that?
Okay. It's your choice. We would rather you not. With this beautiful console app, I bet you could do the Forms app. If you could just try it.
I'm looking at a large library using what we have. That would still be difficult to list all the books, the author,
Right.
all of that would be, I mean, think of the
10,000
library here with
books.
all those books.
Mhm,
You'll scroll for 3 days finding your book.
mhm. Yeah. You got everything there as far as reading through the file. So that looks good. That should work well.
See, this is the one question I have for you guys to maybe help me out here. So I noticed if I take out this, it breaks. So I was hoping you can answer, why do I have to put 2 slashes through all of them?
Because that's the escape character, I think.
Yeah, your backslash indicates that you're getting ready to type in an escape character.
And what's that at sign, $?
It's a verbatim string. Take it as is.
So don't use the slashes in this case.
Okay, because I was confused by that, 'cause for the longest time I was typing 2 slashes, and I saw somebody using @ sign. I was like, oh, well, I don't know what it's
Yeah,
doing.
we all like it better.
Okay,
It's for stuff like /n or whatever. So if it sees backslash, it just thinks that you're going to give it something to do.
Double backslash
That's
indicates that it's
why.
an escape character of a backslash.
that makes more sense, with the dash and like.
Yeah, so you'd have, instead of repos, you'd have return EPOS.
Where's return EPOS?
You look at source /repo,
Oh, okay, you're talking about here.
it would take that /r and say, oh, you want to do a return.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, that makes sense. Next time we'll do Windows forms, but just to make you guys happy.
Yep, I did.
It's easier once
Okay.
you get the hang of it.
Yeah, you'll like it a lot better once you get
You
used
have
to
to
it.
do a lot less
It's like a
work
learning
on
to
the
type.
menus.
If you've never learned to type, we have a guy in my 120 class who's never learned to type. He's from France, and so he said they don't have typing classes. And so he came up the other day and was asking about, what kind of websites he could use. And so he's aware that he's going to slow down dramatically when he first starts trying to type properly, but then he'll be able to increase speed. Whereas right now he's kind of topped out where he is. He can't really get any faster because he's not typing the correct way. He's button and type all over the place. So it's a hard one.
I used to pack until I started programming. Like I went through all my typing classes and never learned how to actually type because the guy took me off so much.
Uh-huh.
I've seen people type like 60 words a minute, usually 2 things.
Oh, yeah. I see people go really fast, but like they say, they hit that plateau and they can never get any faster than that.
And it's difficult to do a whole lot of advanced manipulation, like with curves piece or whatever, whenever you're doing this packing.
I guess it's that same way with forms-based applications listing.
Right now, I think I type at -5 words a minute. And I used to be over 125.
Wow, that's fast. Set that keyboard on fire.
Now, when you got North Korean MIGs flying around you, you get right fast.
This is my book class. Sure, it looks a lot like everyone's setting it up. I can deal with it like an object. And I got my full constructor and NP1 and all my getters, setters, my 2-string override. I got my checking that copies are available by just looking at the numbers that are in versus how many are supposed to be out. And then my actual program here, I'll show you what it looks like. Right now we got it, and look at all our stuff. So I did the switch statement the same way to update or to get the stuff out of the XML file and get it into my program. See where I had it looking at each field and then actually putting it into the object there. This is the same thing where it hopefully stops at the end, doesn't just keep going. So it'll check, it'll look for the next object and it won't be there. And it will stop. This is the functionality just to change the whichever one is selected. This is my update functionality, which doesn't currently work right now. If I try to update something, it's crashing because I don't have the right number of fields. I messed up because I had the copies in system and copies checked out. I didn't have it. I think I didn't have it correctly put it in the right order and everything. So whenever it tries to get the object, it's just all messed up.
So there was an invalid cast.
Yeah, there's probably a couple different problems with it. But it's just trying to cast an object to and then put it into the text box.
Daytime that parse is that issues.
Oh, okay.
They have the same issues.
And then there I got it does my return book thing. I mean, it doesn't do anything to the XML file at this point, but it does. You can, at least when they check it out, I can tell them to do it and better return it. But it doesn't actually look at the book or anything. It doesn't have that actual thing, but it can tell you 15 days from now.
Ooh, nice.
So I did 15, but since it's due at midnight, I do it the whole day.
That's nice.
But that's about it. There's my XML file over here. Pretty much just like everyone else is doing.
So on your text box date that's giving you a hard time in your update, do you think you could just put like, let's just put like .toString or something? Dot date added .toString.
That's my.
Okay, further. Maybe. It's looking really good. Now, this morning, there was like 2 people that had updated the XML file that had written it out. And after the first one of them presented, from then on, someone in the class asked every other person, did yours update? Did yours update? Did yours update? And so by the end, we got to the discussion that it did not say that you had to update the XML file. So it's okay. That doesn't work. It did not say that you had to do that.
You guys see something on that last part where it says convert to N16? That second one where you get in the text box, you're not getting the actual text from it. You're just getting the text box.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Nice.
He was so disgusted by that other one. Did it work? He's like, no,
Yeah.
that didn't work. It did work. Nice. Sweet, that was good. Okay, Andrews is updating. Awesome. Good man. Okay, Austin, how's yours?
I'm gonna get the one off of TFS that's in some other word.
Okay.
What was the portal link for it?
You make sure you do https://CIS-team.otc.edu. So just the same as if you're trying to connect to our server.
Where would I be able to find it? Would it be in the dashboard?
What is the significance of 358?
For what?
Mrs. Riley, 358.
Oh, it's the first 3 digits of the Carthage phone numbers.
Of the
Back Carthage phone numbers back when everybody used to always put the prefix of their phone numbers on stuff to make it unique. So that was just the prefix in Carthage. I've had it way too long to change
I usually put the last 4 numbers.
the last 4 numbers.
Yeah, the
I have a lot of
2757.
security passcodes that are that, so I hope I don't ever forget those phone numbers.
It's like old phone numbers that don't
That's the
exist anymore.
problem, you know, they're getting to be really old phone numbers. At first, they were like new phone numbers, and then they were like the old landline number,
Sometimes I'm convinced to call my old phone number.
just to try it.
Yeah.
Does it work?
I don't know. I've done it.
Try it. You might just sit there right at your house waiting. A lot of people still have their landline.
No, I mean the one from up in Minnesota.
Oh, that
Up
one,
there.
it probably still works then, huh?
You're from Minnesota?
They probably don't have the interweb.
I'm from Chicago. Chicago. I hate to tell you guys, it's the one time my phone number was 4389. All of it.
The whole thing.
We only used the last 4 digits. I mean, we had the area code and prefix.
You just didn't even.
When you were in town, we dialed the last 4 digits.
They can't find the XML file?
It didn't pull over the XML file.
Yeah, you have to put the XML file in your debug.
I did. It didn't pull it over.
It wouldn't let me pull it over with it in the debug when I was checking it out last night. I had to put it in like the solution folder. And like I had to edit my code here to do ..
I seen that.
Someone sent in one in Discord, and let's let him look and see if it'll be closed. You'll have to change it a little bit.
TFS is
Match
like that.
Yeah, it is.
Hopefully, yeah, because it's not source code. Remember, object code is not source code. And if TFS saved everybody's object code, it would run out of space, like real fast. It would have twice as much stuff in it.
Object code?
Object code, machine code, the compiled stuff. TFS doesn't keep that because it's not source code.
Plus 1 for GitHub.
GitHub pieces.
Does it keep, it doesn't keep it either. I mean, depending on how you set it up, if you put in your .getignore to say that you're using a Visual Studio project, then it should upload. that
Yeah, as if
full-
you ever get ignored. If you optimize to get ignored, though, it won't do it.
Yeah, if you decide you wanted to save
there
it.
a-
Repository, you probably don't want to do
Is there a
that.
version of TFS that, like, is there a way to do that on our own? Because like, once I get out of this class, then, I won't have access to the OTC.
Right, you'll want to copy it to GitHub or
Thank you
something.
for whoever sent
So I have to get out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, something different that's outside of OTC.
Or-
We just want you to have an opportunity to learn about that. so that you'll know them those.
Well, I think GitHub requires like more, like, it requires console from every time, like, doesn't it?
It doesn't, you don't have to.
No, they have an app version you can get that does everything for you, but a lot of companies actually would like you to know the console app, how to use the console.
I don't kind of get tired for coding and just learning my own, like, programming stuff.
Also,
That's
you
the
want
only
us to
reason
go
why
ahead
I
and come back to you?
Yeah, that'd probably be the best.
So can you go
Were you
ahead?
saying I had to stick that XML file in?
I just had to do it like in the raw solution folder, like where the .cs's were.
Okay.
All right, here's mine. I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys. Let's go ahead and run the code first. So I did something kind of similar to Ethan. I did, it only shows the title and the author here, but then when you click on it, it fills all the text boxes with further information. And then I changed the read-only option in these to true, so that you can't go in and edit those. And so this one starts with 4 copies available. When you check out, it says be sure to check this in by 14 days from today. And then when you run out, it'll say there's no copies available for checkout. And same thing happens if you try to over check in. So if there's already, if they're already full, if you already have your 4 copies in this case, they'll say all copies have been checked in.
Wait. You added this makes Ernest Klein happy when you check it in.
Isn't that cute?
So yeah,
The author.
for every author, it'll say this makes her review happy. Same thing there. I thought that was kind of funny. Yep. So my code. So I have what everyone else has for creating a reader and then an instance of a book or object of the book, along with loading new book information into it. I've got the title, author, subject, etc. This one we'll read in the last book. Put that into the list box. And then this one keeps track of the highlighted index so that it'll fill, because I only had the title and the author in the actual list box. I wanted to make sure that when you selected whatever index, it would have all pertinent information there in each text box. So that's what that's doing. And the button in is a check-in method. Clicking the check-in button. It checks to see if there's a copy available. So I have the is copy available method in my class. So in this case, I'm sending it the number of copies checked out, and then it'll return a Boolean true or false. So if that copy is greater than 0, it'll execute this. Otherwise, it'll give you that kind of error of all copies have been checked in. And then finally, on this form, I have the button out, the checkout method. And then I have created my variables for today, as well as the check-in date, which is 14 days from today. And then here I use the is copy available method in the class. But this time I pass it the number of copies that are available currently. And so if that returns true, execute this. Otherwise, execute the checkout book, which is, I'll start from the bottom. It'll say, be sure to check this back in by the date, time, day. Otherwise, just say there are no copies available for checkout. And I'm already in the class anyways. I've got my data fields here, and all my getters and setters there. I've got my constructors there as well. That's my is copy available that I used to check the number of copies available and checked out. And then I have my toString, which is what appears in the text box, or in the list box, just the title and the author. So that's what, that's the guts of it.
Questions for him? Looks great. Great job.
I can go. Let me get it set up. Just share my screen. Is it gonna come up? All right, can you guys see that? All right, first off, before I get into this, I want to go with Miss Riley a little bit in her XML, what is it, our parameters for the assignment, for not having Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow and list. That should have been in there. That's the greatest book of all time.
Is this?
Yes.
I'm
Let me get into the code now.
with the
So-
greatest book of all time.
I got saved a little bit here for my classmates. He helped me out to get this fixed. Let's start up here. We have our constructors, our private variables. We have our default constructor here. And then I have my override to string. And I also have a is copy available bool here. And let's go to the form one. So I have an integer from the index, and I heavily based this off of what we did in class. So we have our reader here, and we're checking to make sure that nothing is null. And if it passes all the cases, we're going to add that to our array here. And then in here, I'm going to assign all my text boxes to this here, which is my parameters in my book class. And then, oh, here's my click-in method. So I'm basically making an object called a book, and then I'm passing all the text boxes into that. And then I forgot that I didn't read the assignment correctly, as I found out later, we do not have to write anything to the XML, but I
It's
did.
yours updates from today.
But it does it anyway, so I'm not going to complain. In here we have the the method. We're basically referencing the method in the book class. And basically, if there's something in there, I'm going to append it by 1 or subtract it by 1 there. Then we're going to display the data in the text boxes, and then I'm going to do a message box. I have the same thing for the checkout, except for here I also have parameters for the date and stuff like that. And kind of the same thing here. Also basically, if there are no books available, display error. Let's start it to see if everything is working. I think everything is working properly last I checked. Why are you displaying? Give me a minute. Lost. Do not check this darn code. I swear. Okay, so formatting and everything could be a little bit better, but all this displays, if you click check out first, okay, there's a reason why it's doing that. Hang on. It restarted it. Thanks a lot, Lost. All right, so if I check out a book, it'll say this, and it'll tell me there's some formatting issues still. I need to get that fixed a little bit before I turn this in. We have the date that we checked it out on, and then we have to return it by this date down here. And then if we check it in, it says thank you for returning that and the title of the book. And that is it. Anything else?
Questions? It's great.
I will stop sharing now.
What was the one we just did, formatting error?
Oh, it's in my message show box. That's where my formatting error is. And then on the when I go to display everything in that one list box, I like to format that differently because not all the contents are being displayed in that list. So that's the only thing I would like to get changed, but that's about it.
I'm gonna try to go first and I'm last.
Thank you for being so flexible.
I guess I'll start with the display. So I'm trying to get over ambitious at first, and I wanted to make sure that every book, all the information in every book was always displayed. So while I'm not completely happy with
this works for that. You can see all the information for every book. And you would select which book you want to target down here in this selection box. And for instance, you want to check out a copy of IQ and 4, check out the number will decrease up here down to 0 for your last number. It'll give you the date it'll be due on, which is just exactly 2 weeks from whatever you checked it out from. And if you try to check out more, we're currently waiting that book to your return. And you can check in as many as you like.
At no point do they ask where you got all these copies of IQ and 4.
They'll sell it at the annual book sale.
And so for the actual code, one of the requirements that I saw was you're only supposed to have one constructor that is for every parameter. I didn't necessarily do that. Just sitting a bunch of blank strings, which works. I mean, it's still in all the constructors. But and then the this part, just reading the XML file is all the same as CIS151. Basically, there's nothing special. Yeah.
You mean instead of listing a constructor, you can just put blanks there.
What was that?
Where you did the book mode.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to be cheeky about it because I didn't want
That was good.
and then it adds whenever it finishes each book, it just adds it to the list box. Oh yeah, it updates the selection box with just the title so it's easy to read. And then when you go to check in a book, it tracks the number of copies with using in the actual book class. There's a property for the number of copies available, so I just use that. Sorry, the TFS stuff is right there. There we go. So I'm just using that to track whether or not copies are available. I'm just checking. I'm sending the object back whenever the check-in is clicked. It sends the object through the list box, so I can tell how many copies were left, and it checks to see that something was selected, and if something was selected, then it'll send the object. It'll check the number of copies. It'll get the number of copies in that object, and then it'll check it. If they're checking in, it'll add a number to that, so the object is updated, and it'll tell you thank you for returning. Or if you haven't selected anything, it'll just catch that and say, please select the book first. And the checkout button works almost exactly the same way. Just it has the time date thing for 14 days from right now, and then it'll instead of adding to, it'll subtract from the total number of copies. It'll tell you when it'll be due. And if there aren't any left, then it just catches that with the self statement and tells you that we're waiting for it to return. And again, they haven't clicked anything, make sure they click something first. Any questions?
I didn't ask how you were keeping track of the separate lists. Did you have 2 different arrays? Sorry, I should have watched that when you were going through your code.
Oh, how do you mean?
Your top list box and your bottom list box.
Oh, right. So the right here. So the top box. I'll keep this open.
Oh, I see. You had a separate method. You said that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I'm just sending this the title, and this is the whole object. So this just yeah, it catches the selection. So if I click on index 0, and it knows it's talking about index 0 up here too. Index 1, index 1. That's how it knows like
okay.
That started.
Cool.
Any other questions?
It's good.
It's a nice job.
Very nice. Thank you. We sort of snuck study group 4 in there. Awesome.
I finally got it.
Okay, yay. Let's see it.
All right. I base mine off of the example code given as well. I tried to do the late fee thing, but I ran out of time, unfortunately. So it opens up the XML reader with the book list, which is finally populated again. It'll go ahead and read through everything. And for some reason, it was also being it was sensitive to the amount of spacing that I had in it, which I didn't think it would be. Then it just adds everything to the list box, disposes of the reader. I have the code here to check whether or not anything in the list box has actually been selected, and if so, it'll go ahead and populate it down here. There is an update button somewhere over here, but it's hidden for the time being, and it doesn't really update without breaking. One thing I also try to do, which broke this, is that whenever I do the check in or check out, it goes ahead and displays the message box saying that was successfully checked in, or if it was successfully checked out, and it also gives you the date of when it's due, which is just today's date. And then it does that, unfortunately. Even though it doesn't really update in the list box, I couldn't think of its name, it does indeed update in the XML file, which I think it just overwrote itself again. Yes, it did.
I don't think it overwrote itself. I think you told it to overwrite.
I'm trying to figure out where exactly I'm supposed to overwrite.
You have the power.
That right there. It's
Make it a different file name or something so that
that line right there was what was
causing you trouble. But where are you creating your writer? So right there where you create that writer?
That's in the update one.
Oh, okay.
This one was the checkout.
Oh, okay. So it should keep doing it.
I'm pretty sure that the error was in that line right there. Whenever I cleared out the text
It's
box, it
yep.
cleared out the XML file as well.
It just was going into a loop based on that list box, and if the list box is empty, there was nothing to write out. So makes sense.
So down here, I
It's
say
really good.
check out. It doesn't update here, but whenever I go to the XML file, it asks to be reloaded, and it will decrement the number of copies, but it does it for all of them and not just one specific one, unfortunately. The same thing with the check-in, it will rewrite the entire thing, adding one to all of them.
Okay. Questions? Give me a hand. Stu? My daughter said the library software doesn't work very good in they're used to that kind of stuff happening. I will send you, I will post something that has a data adapter